Welcome to The Explainer. Today, we are diving deep into the stories of the people who literally built the world we live in. We're talking about the titans, the innovators, the power brokers, from the gritty steel mills of the 19th century all the way to the glowing screens in our hands right now. These are the stories of raw ambition, game-changing ideas, and the incredible power that comes with them. So let's kick things off with the visionaries. The ones who, like Steve Jobs said, didn't bother with market research. They just built the future and told us we wanted it. Then we'll get into the revolutionaries, people who built these massive empires based on a really simple, almost obvious idea that turned everything on its head. And, not all power is out in the open. We're going to pull back the curtain on the hidden players, the ones who operate from the shadows and shape our world in ways you might not even realize. So yeah, this is a story about pure ambition, incredible genius, and the complicated messes they often leave behind. The big question is, what does it actually take to build the world? All right, let's get into it. Okay, so our story kicks off way back in the age of steel and oil, with the men who forged the physical and economic backbone of the 20th century. First up, Andrew Carnegie. This guy was a titan. To put it in perspective, when he sold his steel company back in 1901, his personal take was over $200 million. That's billions with a B in today's money. Just staggering. But, and this is a big but, behind all that cash is a really complicated and often pretty brutal story about the workers who actually built that empire. So this is where it gets really interesting. You've got these two giants, Carnegie and Rockefeller, with totally different playbooks. On one hand, you have Carnegie, who's all about playing the good guy in public, talking about labor peace, while behind the scenes he was all for non-union shops that would drive wages into the ground. Then you've got Rockefeller. He was way more blunt about it. His philosophy was basically, let someone else do the hard work of innovating. Pioneering don't pay, he'd say. He'd just wait and then swoop in and control the whole system. For him, it was simple. Control the railroads and you control everything. All right, so let's shift gears a bit. We've talked about building the industrial backbone. Now let's talk about how the next generation of titans completely reinvented how we all shop. Just look at these numbers for a second. They are absolutely wild. In just a decade, Walmart goes from a small regional player to a billion-dollar giant. So what was the secret sauce? It was Sam Walton's big idea, which sounds so simple now, but was totally revolutionary back then. Take care of your employees, and they'll take care of your customers. He really believed the magic wasn't happening in some fancy boardroom. It was with the person on the store floor. Now, speaking of battles, let's talk about Phil Knight. His story with Nike is just one fight after another. First, he's battling his own supplier just to get off the ground. But right when things start looking up, bam, the US government slaps him with a $25 million bill. Can you imagine? Suddenly, his biggest enemy isn't another shoe company, it's his own government. For a small company like Nike was back then, this wasn't just a problem, it was an extinction-level event. So Walton and Knight changed what we buy and how we buy it. But our next visionary? He changed the very tools we use to live our lives. This is where Steve Jobs just completely rewrote the rules. At Apple, he turned the whole product development process upside down. See, he didn't go to his engineers and ask, hey, what cool stuff can you build? Nope. He and his team would dream up the perfect product first, how it should look, how it should feel, how simple it should be. And then he turned to the engineers and say, your job is to make that happen. Design wasn't just a coat of paint at the end, it was literally the first thing on the blueprint. And this right here really nails the difference. Before Jobs came back to Apple, it was an engineer's company. The whole idea was, okay, here are the computer parts, now let's make a beige box to put them in. And it led to what one of their own execs called awful products. When Jobs returned and teamed up with the designer Jony Ive, everything changed. They put the artist in charge, not the engineer. And, the Macintosh, the iMac, the iPhone, the results pretty much speak for themselves, don't they? Okay, but power isn't always something you can buy in a store or hold in your hand, right? Some of the most powerful people are the ones who shape the systems we live in, our cities, our laws, our politics, and a lot of the time, we don't even know their names. Take a look at this number, 550,000. That's how many people lived in public housing built under the watch of one man in New York City, Robert Moses. Now here's the crazy part. Moses was never elected to any major office. And yet, he had enough power to completely rebuild modern New York, housing hundreds of thousands, yes, but also bulldozing entire neighborhoods and displacing just as many to get it done. So how on earth did he get that much power? Simple. He became a master of the system. He built his own little empire of public authorities that were technically part of the government, but they didn't really answer to anyone. He was so untouchable that even the President of the United States, FDR, who hated the guy, couldn't get rid of him. It was a personal kingdom, paid for by the public, but totally outside the democratic process. Now let's look at the political world. The Koch brothers, they weren't building bridges, but they were building something just as powerful, a political machine. And it was designed from the ground up to reshape American politics. The method was brilliant in a way. You use these harmless-sounding names for your groups, you hide your real pro-corporate agenda behind popular ideas like liberty, and you layer it all through so many nonprofits that the money becomes almost impossible to trace. It's influence by design. But of course, there's a dark side to all this ambition. For our final section, we're going to look at what happens when that relentless drive for power and profit goes way, way too far and turns toxic. The Sackler family, they built a dynasty on one single drug, OxyContin. And this chart, well, it tells a pretty horrifying story. You can see Purdue Pharma's revenue from OxyContin just shooting through the roof. But look at the other bars. At the exact same time, you see the lawsuits and the number of overdose deaths in America climbing right alongside it. It's a devastating parallel. And the thing is, they knew. People were warning them. This quote is just chilling. A friend emailed Richard Sackler this message back in 2002, comparing him to a drug lord after seeing OxyContin all over his daughter's school. But even with alarm bells ringing like that, the company just kept pushing. The goal, it's alleged, was just to keep the profits flowing, no matter the cost. Okay, for our last story, we're diving into a scandal that hit the absolute core of the global financial system. It's all about something called LIBOR. Now, most of us have never heard of it, but it's this benchmark interest rate that affects pretty much everything. Your mortgage, your student loans, you name it. And for years, the very people in charge of it were secretly rigging the game. And this quote right here, it just sums up the whole mindset perfectly. It's about one of the main traders involved, Tom Hayes. The thing that kept him up at night wasn't that he was doing something wrong. It was that he wasn't doing it well enough. It wasn't about right or wrong for him. It was a game. His only job, as he saw it, was to push every single boundary to make more money. So what's the takeaway here? From the steel mills of Carnegie to the smartphone in your hand, this relentless drive to build, to innovate, to win, it's shaped our entire world. But what we've seen today is that progress and destruction can be two sides of the very same coin. The genius that creates a beloved product might also create a nightmare for its workers. The ambition that builds a city can also tear one apart. So it leaves us with a pretty heavy question. When these titans build our world, who ends up paying the price?